Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Right on. Pretty good. So, it's I think I forgot to mention this last week, but there is a daily check-in form, and let's be sure to fill that out. So let's take a few minutes to start filling that out today before we jump into the slides. And if you don't remember, the check-in form can be accessed in Slack in the Echo Evening Weekend channel. It should be pinned to the very top. And I believe everyone is in here. So I've also been asked to remind all of you that the first assessment will be released on Saturday and it will be due on Monday. I believe it's a pretty straightforward assessment, so no one should be very concerned. It focuses on interview prep, I believe. Let's see. Space. All right. So if you haven't finished filling out your check-in form, you'll have time later on today during one of your breaks to finish that up. And aside from that, this is essentially going to be our plan for the day. We'll run through the slides just like last week. We'll chat about what you all studied yesterday. We'll go over today's material, and then we'll run through the challenges. So who can tell me, what did you guys cover yesterday?
We did higher order functions as well for JavaScript.
Right on. And do you remember what the higher order functions, the built-in functions were?
Yeah, it was like map, reduce, for each, and so on.
I think there was one more.
Filter.
Yes.
There you go.
Yep. So we're going over the same stuff today, but in Python. But just as a quick review, JavaScript has first-class functions. Functions are treated as regular objects, and that means they can be passed as arguments, returned from other functions, and assigned to variables. So in this example here, we are defining higher order function. We are telling it that it can accept one argument, and it will run that argument. We define a second function, an argument function, and its job is to simply print to the console this statement. And we call that first function with the second function as an argument. Similarly, a function can be returned from another function. And in this case, we are essentially returning a second function without the need of accepting an argument. Very similar to the last example. When we call higher order function, it will call the function that it's hard-coded to call. And the last thing you should all remember is that you could assign these first-class functions to variables. So we have this variable here called increment function. It takes in a number and it iterates that number by 1. So if we were to console log this function passing it 1, we would receive 2. And if we were to console log it with 10, we would receive 11. Python also supports first-class functions, and it's really similar to JavaScript. All that's really different is the syntax. The higher order functions, however, are going to be slightly different. First off, there is no for each in Python. You just have your map, filter, and reduce. But there's not really a need for each because Python has syntax for loops that are much simpler than they are in JavaScript. So emulating the behavior of JavaScript's for each function is very straightforward. For I in list, print I, and it will iterate through this iterable object, printing the value at the index until it reaches the end of the list. So in Python, list is a constructor that takes an iterable object like a string, a tuple. You could even pass it another list, and it will return an array based on those values. The first higher order function that we are going to cover, that you covered yesterday, is map, and it behaves slightly different in Python than it does in JavaScript because it creates a map object that doesn't quite behave like you would expect it to. If we were to define this function, calculate square, which takes in a number and multiplies that number by itself, let's also define a list called numbers, for numbers 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we were to map this list, or let's say, yes, let's map this list using this function, we would receive a map object as opposed to the map function returning a list that is easily legible. I did kind of gloss over this, but the map function in Python accepts 2 parameters. That first one being the function that you want to run on each index of the list, and that second parameter being the list itself. So as mentioned, if you were to run this, you would receive a map object. But utilizing, because it is an iterable object, you could utilize either for loops or the list constructor to iterate through this map object. So if we were to toss square map into a for loop, it would run through every element inside of that object, and it will print the value. Very similarly, if we were to call the list function, passing in that square map, it will print every value inside of that map object as a list. Filter is very similar to how it is in JavaScript. There isn't really anything funky about it. If we were to define a function called checkIfEven that accepts a parameter, it will determine whether it is even or odd using modulus. And if it has a remainder of 0, then it returns true. Otherwise, it returns false. And so if we were to create this list of numbers, and if we were to pass it in, or if I should say, if we were to run filter on it, it would output a list of only the even numbers, only the values that essentially return true. And that is pretty much it for the basic overview. I'm gonna switch over now to Visual Studio, show you some other cool little things. So what I have here is a little Python script going over what's basically in the README for today's lesson. But I've also added a few cool things here for debugging purposes. One of those things is called Pretty Printer. This allows you to print things in a more legible way than what's there.
Are you sharing your Visual Studio code right now? Because
Oh,
it still
yeah.
shows the slides.
Right on. Thank you for pointing that out. Let me switch screens. Stop this. Share. All right, can you see this now?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, now again, let me know if it's too small, but like I was saying, the first thing I did was import this method, or it's more of a little module. It's a module called Pretty Print, which will essentially, like it says, print an output of something in a very pretty manner. The next thing that I installed here is called the Python debugger. And after calling the Python debugger, I'm able to utilize breakpoints, which allows us to pause within the execution of code in what's sort of a debug environment. So let me run this script, and you can see we are now in this debugging mode because it says PDB. That's how we can tell. And it will stop at the breakpoints that you call. You can use commands like help to see what is available. And you could use something like C, for example, to continue. Either type it out, which will take you to the next breakpoint. And once we're at this breakpoint, it will tell us we are now at line 12 of the code. And being at line 12 of the code, we have access to anything that's been executed above this. So we now have access to this double function. So if we were to call this double function and pass it in an element like 25, we will run that function and it will return a value of 50. So continuing, we are now at line 22 of our code. And we now have access to this list that was defined and return and a map function that is assigned to a variable called return value. And if we were to see what this return value is, we see that it is a map object. And this is what I was saying earlier, that the map object behaves not quite like you would expect. As opposed to returning a list, it returns an object. And we can inspect this object with another built-in function called dir, D-I-R. And let's take a look at what that returns. It looks really wonky, but essentially what all of this is it's a list of the available methods. And this is where something like pretty print comes in handy. Let's use pretty print, which I assign to a variable pp, to print the dir of return value. And now we have it all organized in a very pretty manner. But as we can see here, we have access to certain functions like iter for iterates. And like mentioned earlier, when we have this map object, we can do all sorts of stuff like creating a for loop for I in return value. Whoops. Let's actually just use list instead. Let's call list and we'll pass it in return value, and this will return. Maybe I named it something else. No, it's named return value. Return value should be the map object. Return argument, return value. Oh, I see. I guess it wants me to be able to print it. So let's print return value. And we have the values of this map object. So next part of this code, this breakpoint, we now see that we have access to what I just did, which was run dir on return value. And then next breakpoint should be the end of the code where I ran the print on it. And once you're done debugging, you can exit out using exit. So any questions so far?
Line 2 for your import statement, it was commented out. It still imports it, or do we not use?
Oh, yeah, let me clarify. Breakpoint is now built into Python, so you don't actually have to import this. I think when I was writing this out, I was referencing a much older Stack Overflow page. But yes, it's not necessary. Python debugger is now available in Python 3. Yes, any other questions?
We have a student that needs to be let in the class, just FYI.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
He lost connection. He's
Oh, I see. I didn't get the notification. Tiffany, where does that usually show up?
I haven't hosted him.
Here it is. I'm guessing, did he just drop?
He said waiting to be let in.
Okay,
So
here he is. Welcome back, Harry. Okay, let's start running through what we're going to be doing in today's challenges. I'll stop sharing here, and I'm going to pull up our curriculum for the day. Okay, you'll be able to see this. And today we have two challenges, one being credit check, where we are going to use what we just learned with these higher order functions in Python to apply the Loon algorithm to check the validity of a credit card number. So the Loon algorithm is, as we can see in Wikipedia here, an algorithm that was created by IBM scientist Hans Peter Loon. And it is a simple checksum formula used to validate a variety of identification numbers, such as credit card numbers, IMEI numbers, national provider identifier numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in today's challenge, you could read more about the algorithm here, but we are going to write out code, a little program that will execute this algorithm to confirm the validity of a credit card number. So this will be the first exercise. It is relatively straightforward. Try to use everything that you've learned so far these past few days. And if you want, as a bonus challenge, because I don't think this was a part of yesterday's challenges, feel free to take a stab at it in JavaScript as well. The challenge after this will be going over anagrams. And in this challenge, we are going to make a program that takes in two different strings and sees if the individual letter or number characters in a string matches in both. For example, ABCDE2 can be rearranged to C2ABED. Your program should return true for all of the following examples. Because March is an anagram of charm, it should return true. Let's say if you were to pass in charm and, I don't know, chocolate, it should return false. So again, use this, do this challenge in Python, and as a stretch challenge, take a stab at it in JavaScript. Any questions?
For the anagram one, so it needs to be case insensitive is what we're looking for. Like we don't count like uppercase C is a different letter than lowercase c.
Well, the challenge itself doesn't specify. And
Okay.
it does imply that it should return true even in this example. But if you do finish early, why not take a stab at it and see if you can add some additional functionality to check for a match between uppercase and lowercase characters. That should add a bit of complexity if this challenge itself is a little too easy for you. Right on. So everyone feel free to take a break. You could turn your cameras off, but please be back by 6:05, starting the challenges, and we will reconvene at, did I say, what time did I say? Reconvene at about 6:45, 7 o'clock. I'll ask around at 6:45 to see how everybody's doing. And if we're all ready to go, we'll just jump right into the review. Otherwise, if you all need more time, we'll get a bit more time. But yes, go ahead, take a break, and we will reconvene. I will check in on you all at 6:45.